Well, we have about an hour and a half, I think, and I won't take up too much time to introduce Amardeep Singh and the beautifully written book, Lost Heritage, the Sikh Legacy in Pakistan. Just a word about our speaker today. He was born in Gorakhpur in India and has lived in Hong Kong and Singapore. In his academic career, he has combined engineering and business administration. Now that's a great combination. A lot of people from our part of the world have done that, and they have done extremely well in terms of economic rewards, but you have done very well in terms of literary.
Thank you.
So while working in the corporate sector, he has pursued literary and creative arts. He comes to us at the Institute at an interesting time. In fact, he and I and two other people or three other people were at a TV station the other day where we talked about 70 years of India and Pakistan as independent states. And he made some very interesting comments. But there were a couple of foreigners, and it was very interesting for me how little they understand about our part of the world, and I hope this kind of work will help understanding where South Asia is, where India and Pakistan are, and so on. While I haven't read all that Amardeep Singh has written, I was able to get hold of the book rather late and absorbed all the pictures in the book, and he tells me he's taken them all other than a few black and white pictures. I was struck by one episode he relates. Some of the disciples of Bulle Shah, the Punjabi mystic poet who did his work in the first part of the 18th century, were beaten by some observant Muslims for not fasting during the month of Ramadan. They complained to the poet as to why, being his disciples, they were beaten. So Bulle Shah asked them, "What did they ask you and what did you say?" And they said, "We just said that we are Muslims and they sat upon us." So Bulle Shah said, "That's why you were beaten. Because because you identified yourself. You identified yourself with a religion, with a group of people. I remain nothing, and they could not do anything to me. I am just a part of God." I thought that was a very interesting. I also learned, I didn't know this, reading not all of your book, but some parts of it, that there is a kind of correspondence between Sikhism and Sufism. That association of feminine attributes with God, am I right?
No,
and masculine.
Feminine with the human and
yes.
masculine with the
So
God.
that's,
It's a union that we are looking for.
Did you know that, Professor Saab, Ambassador Saab?
No, but I'm learning.
So with that brief introduction, let me turn over to Amardeep Singh. One thing we are going to do is, once he has spoken and there'll be question and answer session, his preference is that he would like to answer each question when it is asked, rather than a cluster. So that's what we will do. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Burki ji. First and foremost, I'd like to thank ISAS for creating this platform for me to come here and share my journey and my findings. I also want to thank His Excellency Mr. Nasrullah Khan ji for being here with us. This work would not have been possible, I say this time and again, without the common men, the people of Pakistan, who embraced me, embraced my quest. And that was the first book. What you see on the picture up there is, on the screen up there, is that there's a second book which is coming out It should be out in another 1.5 months' time, which is a similar format, which is called, this is called The Lost Heritage, the Sikh Legacy in Pakistan. That's called The Quest Continues for Lost Heritage, the Sikh Legacy in Pakistan. So it's a 500-page book, that's another 500-page book. But the 500-page book that follows, I would like to thank the Pakistan government, and sir, to you, because if not for you, I wouldn't have been there. So we know that he knows the details, but I really appreciate what the government did and embraced me, because I've been able to get into places which I could have never imagined, probably because the conflicts that exist across both sides of the border, and also especially as a Sikh, you get identified, and probably your loyalties are assumed to be on one side versus the fact that you have no loyalties to anyone but mankind, right? So you do get questioned, but it was the Pakistan government that openly embraced me. So thank you, sir. I want to actually, the way I want to structure this presentation is it's a socio-cultural impact of partition, right? But I want to actually share my personal reflections. So it's going to be a very visual intensive journey, right? So, and I'm happy to take any questions that emerge from it. But I first want to give you my background, why I went on this path. And then as a composite of both the journeys, I have traveled to 126 cities and villages. And what I have observed from the Sikh legacy point of view, I want to share that, right? So this is the 70th, 7 decades of partition, the 71st year. And I did post the other day on the 14th and 15th of August on my Facebook, my personal thoughts of looking at the various forms of joys, and there's a place for that. You know, I'm not questioning that. People have all the rights to be happy of their own nations, right? As the flags unfurled, for me, it has always been a moment of reflection, a moment of sadness when humanity suffered, right? We have, in this flurry of activities, forgotten that what went through the people on both sides of the border, right? It is not about Hindus and Sikhs on one side and Muslims on the other side. The fact remains that the Jains also suffered, the Parsis suffered, atheists also suffered, the who had no belief in any god also suffered, right? So it's a composite suffering that has made me delve into this realm. I, having been born as a Sikh, of course, every person grows up with a certain amount of conditioning, have grown up with a certain amount of conditioning, I don't deny that. But I've tried to leave that conditioning, I've tried to embrace humanity, I have actually tried to look at the subject from my community's lens, but I believe you in me, my findings apply to every community. It is not about the Sikh legacy, it is about what happened to humanity. And you can choose to see it from this lens, that's just about it, right? And before I move forward, I just want to read out a couplet which is in Punjabi, and I'll translate it. It basically says, Lali akhiyan di pe dasdi hain, roye tusi bhi ho, te roye asi bhi hain. The redness in my eyes, because the tears reflect that both you and I have cried. Right, so with that I want to start off. So see this as a humanities, a quest to understand the human perspective, right? As the play ended in 1947 and dispersed the people across both sides of the borders, my first book was reviewed. I was very glad that it was reviewed by a Muslim, because I wanted to actually maintain this diverse perspective. So I asked Professor Ishtiaq Ahmed ji to look at my book and write a blurb for it. Tell me if I'm going wrong anywhere. And I was very glad that a Muslim reviewed it. And what he said out here was, I just want to actually read about the highlighted portion. Uniquely, it captures the distinctive Sikh contribution to the spiritual, social, cultural, and architectural history of present-day Pakistan, over which a curtain was drawn. It was truly a play that ended in 1947, because the entire community dispersed. The second book, again, I have maintained the same principle. I've got one Indian, one Pakistani to review it for the blurb, and I've got one Singaporean to review it for the blurb. But what I want to actually read out of a man who was impacted by partition, and he's a big man in Bollywood right now, Gulzar ji. Gulzar is a poet. He writes, he's written many songs, but he does sher o shairi. And what he reflected, because he was from a village called Dinga near Jhelum in Pakistan, and now he's in Bombay. So what he did was, when he read this, he called me up. He says, Amardeep, I'm very emotional. Is it okay if I can write a couplet in Urdu? I said, by all means, I will publish it in Urdu. I'll print it on my back of my cover in Urdu, but we will translate it too. So while those who cannot read the Urdu, this is what he's written in my second book, it's coming out. But the couplet that he read was, I'll read it out in Urdu, and then we'll get down to the translation. He says, "Kahan se ibtida ki thi?" My Urdu is not that great, but still I'll get through. मैं कहीं भूल ना जाऊं, जनू में लौट के मैं नक्शे कदम ढूंढ रहा हूं. What it means is, where did it begin from? I do not wish to forget. In frenzy do I return in search of those footprints. So these are the emotions that is invoking amongst the people, and that's to me is the essence of the work. I've always reflected, were Sikhs a collateral damage in the events of partition? Because again and again I've heard the two sides, and again, don't feel this that I'm risking it down only the Sikh lens. The fact is, it applies to everyone, but I'm trying to study it from that angle. But the two-nation theory that we talk about and we debate about and we go tugs of war left, right, for 7 decades we've been doing that. And I reflect on it and say, where do we fit into this two-nation theory? Were we a collateral damage? Where do the other communities fit? And the fact is, I don't have an answer to this. It's just my mere reflection. Because time's gone by, and I don't think I can correct anything, but I can reflect on it. And to me, it looks like no one thought about us. And when they didn't think about us, they didn't think about many other communities. And 7 decades later, the subject is socio-cultural impact of partition. The biggest answer is to this question in terms of socio-cultural impact is, I was a banker. I'm an accidental officer. Engineering and MBA did not teach me emotions. My foray into the subject of Pakistan and the events of partition, I think, made me more humane. So when I actually look back, and for years I've been delving into the history of the region, reading spirituality, trying to cut across Sufism, Sikhism, Hinduism, a lot of thoughts there and here. But I would go back to my community and ask the youth many a times that, look, if you had a free access to go to Pakistan, where would you like to go? Now, this is 7 decades later. And the answer, invariably, would be just the following. It would start with, I would like to go and see Nankana Sahib. Nankana Sahib, where is the founder of the Sikh faith, Guru Nanak, was born. Sikh faith was founded on the soils of Pakistan. They would say, we would like to go and see Baba Nanak's place. Some would say, we would like to go to another shrine which is maintained in Pakistan, which is called Panja Sahib. Some would go as far as saying Dera Sahib. But, answers are limited to the religious domain. And then some would go as far as saying that, we would like to go and see our father's and mother's place. And then I would say, and where else? And they go blank. And to me, that's where lies the answer. That our minds have been conditioned 7 decades after partition, that we cannot think more than religion and our personal quest. My mother and father and the religion. Sorry, but before I give an answer and my perspective on that, I just want to give a bit of a context here. You got 2 maps there. On your left is the map pre-1849, the green section inside that, the pre-1849, before British came into the Punjab. Punjab was the last standing state in the conquest of India, and it gave the stiffest resistance. whatever we might brand people in terms of religion and so on and so forth, the fact remains in the history of Punjab, the only times Punjabis came together was under Ranjit Singh. And his was a very, very secular rule, which brought together Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs inside the cabinet and the military. Ranjit Singh's, a less known fact and less known talked about thing is that Ranjit Singh's army was more than 50% Muslims. So how can it be a religion-based kingdom? I call it a very secular kingdom where all participated. His cabinet ministry had, his foreign minister was a Muslim, but these things are not talked about these days. But what I'm trying to show there is the green portion is where the Sikh kingdom, I don't call it a Sikh kingdom. If given a choice, I would call it as a Punjabi kingdom, but the history has called it as a Sikh kingdom because British wrote the history. And British always had a flavor of seeing Ranjit Singh as, they do the divide and rule kind of a thing. So, but they saw Ranjit Singh as Sikh, so they called it a Sikh kingdom. But the fact is it was a Punjabi kingdom. And that was the kingdom, the green one. And then on the second map, what I've done is I've overlaid what became after 1947. And so I've turned the yellow section, which was the Sikh kingdom is the yellow section, my fault. What on your left-hand side is where India and Pakistan are today. And on the India and Pakistan, on the right-hand side, I've overlaid the yellow section as what the Sikh kingdom was and where it falls. What comes out is clearly is 20% of that kingdom today is in India and 80% of that is in Pakistan. Right? Now go back to that question which I was saying. If you had an option to go to Pakistan, what would you see? And let's try and answer that question. Legacies are bigger than religion. Religion is a facet of a legacy. When I went to Mansehra and I was taken by a descendant of one of our distant relatives who chose to stay back and adopted Islam, he took me to the grave of his father. And on it, when I read it, the answer of this question lies in there. It says, Ghulam Sarwar Wald Makhan Singh. Ghulam Sarwar is his adopted Muslim name, which has changed his identity after 1947. But he's the son of Makhan Singh, and Singhs are all primarily Sikhs, right? So to me, here lies the answer on this grave. We've buried our past, and in this grave lies a man who, for whatever reason, I don't question his reasons, personal motivation, positive, negative, that's his personal reason. He stayed back. But the fact remains, his legacy today, is not known to people, right? And such are the stories that we actually reflect back in my community itself has killed its total understanding of what an empire it was, what were the footprints. Were my forefathers so incompetent that they just made 3 gurdwaras, the 3 temples that are presently being talked about? Surely not. And as I delved into the histories pages for years, to me it had been dawning that the presence was much more bigger. Our saints were common, our friends were common, our languages were common, but somewhere down the line we are all divided. And therefore, when after 25 years in the corporate world, I personally decided to not take a change which was going to take me to Australia, and I thought it was important for me to be in Singapore, where my kids were in school. So as I stepped out, I didn't know my life was going to change so dramatically because of Pakistan. But I just decided I wanted to go to Pakistan to see my father's place. And my quest was not a quest to write a book. I'm not a person from academics. I'm an accidental author, right? So I went into Muzaffarabad, which is in Kashmir, where the problem of Kashmir started, right? In fact, we were speaking on the television, and the anchor actually raised a question about Kashmir, and my answer was, where does the other communities fit into this equation? As we debate about Kashmir between the Hindus and Muslims and so on and so forth, where do the Pandits fit? Where do the Sikhs fit into this debate? We don't know, right? So my father was from Muzaffarabad. Muzaffarabad had a very large Sikh population, very large. And it was a historical point where the Sikhs, the guru of the Sikhs, actually had gone into Kashmir from Wazirabad. He had come in Pakistan, and gone through this route into Kashmir Valley, which is in India's side now. I wanted to go to that bridge which you see on your right-hand side and just hold the soil because there was a big massacre that happened here on 21st October 1947 when the problem of Kashmir started, and a lot of people from our family were the victims in that, because there were 300 of them were Sikhs were put on the bridge on either side, they were fired, and a lot of our personal people suffered in that, so in our family, and I had grown up hearing those stories. So I just wanted to go there as a debt to my father and my mother. I just want to pick up the soil from there and bring it back. But I went there, I didn't feel like picking up the soil. I left and I came back because to me it was a chapter that was closed. I was just trying to feel it. But this was just a small reason. What happened was thereafter was the works that I'm talking about, the two works. Because as I went into Pakistan, the people met up with me and the people embraced me. And that's the beauty of my journey, because there was no Hindu, Sikh or Muslim there at the ground level. It was humanity. And in 30 days that I went about, without any support, without any security or anything, as people may perceive today that, going into Pakistan is a danger, I just traveled freely, and people embraced me. And what you see on your left-hand side is the dots where I traveled. I went to 36 places in 30 days. That was the start of the journey. And I came back and I looked at my repository of pictures and I said to myself, wow, this is like a huge amount of stuff that I've seen, and it's just not traveling. Wherever I would go, some divine intervention was throwing up places that I was reading in the history in terms of remnants, in terms of monuments, and I was just being shown that, some power was showing me, and I thought, what, it'll be so criminal on my end if I was not to go back and document this for posterity. It's so easy to go back to the corporate world, and if you go and actually document this, leave it for the next few generations, which is not a work which has not been done for 7 decades, I need to do that. So I didn't go back to the corporate world. But thereafter, as I was saying in January, thanks to Mr. Nasrullah Khanji and the Pakistan government, I don't know what energies embraced me once again. And in January and February, I went, go to the map that you see next on the next side, on your right-hand side. It took me to 126 cities and villages, 90 cities and villages across Pakistan once again. And this time it was all the 5 states, from Balochistan, Sindh, Khyber, Punjab, and as well as Kashmir. In totality, I've traveled to 126 cities and villages. And therefore, with that background, I just want to actually talk a little bit about what I've seen, what I've observed, what are my reflections on the socio-cultural aspect. But you know what, when I came back, I found so thanks to Pakistan government, presently, so at the time of partition, there was only one Sikh temple which was left operational, which was Nankana Sahib, which is where Guru Nanak was born. Today, 7 decades after, there are about 23 historical gurdwaras that are operational. So I do thank the Pakistan government, and I always say this, the willingness is there. But the problem is so big that the entire communities have left their heritage and gone. So the issue cannot be grappled with. It's a huge problem. And I'm just talking about the Sikhs. If you start looking at the Hindu and the Jain presence, that becomes a bigger problem. And at the same time, when you cross the border and you go, the Muslims in Punjab also suffered the same, right? Punjab was ethnically cleansed on both the sides. Muslims were cleansed on the east, and Hindus and Sikhs were cleansed on the west. The Islamic heritage suffers in the same manner on the east side. So the problem is much bigger than what we can comprehend. But on the other side, I found a lot of vestiges, what you see as the second picture. And to me, both these aspects I tried to document in this book. But my key catalyst of this was when I went to Atak Fort, where Ranjit Singh took this over from the Afghans. I'm showing you a black and white picture. This is a picture from Alexander Burns' travelogue, which he came in 1831 to the Punjab, because there was in the early 1800s, there was a great game which was ongoing in Europe for the tussle of India, and the British in India had come by sea, and they were looking at, will we be in threat if we lose against Napoleon, or if the Tsars join hands with Napoleon and they come through Punjab, and if Ranjit Singh opens the gateway to India, then that's the end of the empire in India for the British. So they had started spending spies into the Punjab. And Alexander Burns brought in 5 horses to give to Ranjit Singh in Lahore, but he came by ship and he went up the river Indus from Sindh and he came to Attock, and this is the place where he sketches it, where he docked his ship. And I looked at Attock where I was standing. It was similar, and I said, is this a divine intervention that I've been brought to the same place and I'm standing, and I'm 25 years back I read this travelogue, and that's where I felt that, you know what, the British clearly knew how to document the history. We as people from the Indian subcontinent are very poor in doing that. And in those days, the cameras did not exist. And here are some of the sketches that we have. And we have now cameras, and I'm actually traveling and I'm clicking so many photographs. So to me, it was that, you know, we've got to document this for the future. And if the British could do it in the words, I can do it with visuals. Because today the fact remains, the people don't want to read just text. People want a visual anchoring to the text to be able to get motivated to get into the essence of the subject. And therefore I decided I need to write this. With that, I'm bringing you the socio-cultural observations in a few slides. As a composite of both of my works, right? As I said earlier, Punjab was cleansed on both the sides, right? And there's no ifs and doubts about that. Amritsar was a 50% Muslim city. Today, you barely find, the Muslims that you find there are the migrants who are coming in from other parts of India, because of economic reasons. They are living perfectly well in India right now in Amritsar. But in 1947, it became 100% Hindu and Sikh city. And so also Lahore, which had a significant Sikh and Hindu population, overnight as twin cities became an Islamic city. Right? So here's a problem, right? Big problem. Now the perception, however, interestingly around the world is that Pakistan is predominantly, Pakistan is where minorities are not able to survive. That's the perception. You know what? I always say this: problems exist in every country. Terrorists exist in every country. You know, issues exist in every country. Be it US, UK, India, Pakistan, it exists everywhere. Even Nepal, right? The fact is, what people don't know is that yes, there was a problem in 1947. Thereafter, many communities are still surviving in Pakistan. Right? I don't know the exact number, but I think my sense is it must be about 5 to 6 million, sir, if I think so, in terms of minorities, right? So there is a significant, there's a sizable population which is there. From a Sikh legacy perspective, what I've done in this map is I've shaded a few areas. What you find in that reddish kind of a color is an area which was cleansed as an outcome of partition. And I'm not showing the cleansing that happened in India, so it's just a part of the story I'm telling you, because cleansing also happened there. But my subject is Pakistan, right? So cleansing happened in this reddish area. There is a small pocket between that area of the reddish, which you see tucked inside a green and a bluish. This is the frontier area close to Afghanistan border, where, interestingly, Hindus in that green belt, Sikhs, Pashtun Sikhs in that green belt are still surviving. There's a community of about 12,000 to 13,000 Sikhs, turban-wearing, beard-keeping Sikhs, who are living perfectly fine in that area. Yes, they did face problem, and over the years they have regained their respect in the society, and they're doing very well, and they are surviving there. So there's one pocket of Sikhs living there. What you find tucked in there also inside that red circle is the blue portion, and then if you come down south, the blue portion that I've drawn in Sindh and Balochistan, it actually reflects an interesting confluence of belief systems, and this is what I call as Nanak Panthis. Panth in the Indian word basically means a community who are the believers of Nanak. So believers of Nanak, for whatever reason, so in today's India, we might, because a Sikh is so boxed to as a definition of being defined as a man with a turban and a beard in terms of a perception, but if you go back in history, Nanak actually transcended a lot of societies, right? There were Muslims who also respected him, Hindus equally respected him, and a lot of practices of Hindus who were aligned along the Indus belt to the Nanak's belief system are not the same as the Gangetic bent Hinduism, where the Punjabi Hindus got dispersed into. Because when they came on this side, they got dispersed into a place where the caste system was more prevalent, the multitudes of gods and goddesses were more prevalent, but the belief system along the Indus belt was that of more, and in terms of Hindu philosophy, if I have to say, as Advait Hinduism, non-duality Hinduism. That means God is one, which is similar to Sufism, which is similar to Nanak's belief system. And this is the belt where a lot of those Nanak Panthis are still surviving. I have had a chance to actually meet and interact with them, right? It's interesting, we have limited time, so I can't get into depth of that, but I've come in my second book, my perceptions. But it's interesting how when a conflict happened and the dispersion happened, how the belief systems changed amongst the communities as they landed in the new geographies, and how the ones who were tucked away and left in that land where they lost their contact with the broader groups of people, how their belief systems have remained intact as pre-1947. It's interesting when I've gone into these people whom now in India, if you look at them and we will simply say, he's a Hindu, but these people will themselves say, they appear to be Hindu, but they will proudly say in my conversations with them, we are Sikhs. And here's a dilemma you've got in terms of their practices and belief systems, that they are perceived by the world as Hindus, but they are themselves calling themselves as Sikhs, but they don't look and see to be Sikhs, right? So this is an interesting socio-cultural impact after partition. So I'm touching a little bit on philosophy, culture, language, and heritage. From a philosophy perspective, our saints were divided in partition. The Radcliffe line has been so criminal in our philosophical mindset that a Sikh today has forgotten the closeness in terms of poetry, in the terms of our I remember my parents used to so fondly talk about Baba Bulle Shah, Baba Farid, Sai Mia Mir, and so many other. My father used to read Urdu as a language. At the same time, Nanak is forgotten in Pakistan amongst the Muslims. I mean, I got a Facebook message from one person in Lahore. He just has written a book on Nanak, the founder of Sikh faith, and he's writing to me. He says, the awareness is so little out here that I struggle that my book is not reaching the people about this common heritage. And he's sending me a book from there. But when I look at these things, I say, our saints are divided. That's the biggest social cultural impact from a philosophical point of view. And once philosophies get divided, then the mind will just keep dividing further and further. Philosophy is the only thing that unites humanity. And if we can't accept our common philosophical unity, then I don't know where this road will lead us to. As I stood at Ganda Singh Wala border near Kasur, where Baba Bulle Shah's place is, and I looked on the other side, and here's the border. It says in Urdu, he says, Delhi is 360 kilometers, and Firozpur is 9 kilometers. And I'm looking at myself and says, Firozpur is where Baba Farid's big mazar is there. And I'm saying, here the people would like to go to the mazar 9 kilometers from here, and the people across would like to just come 9 kilometers on this side and go to Kasur, to Baba Bulle Shah's place, but we can't. To me, it feels like the Punjabis have left their trousers in Pakistan and the shirt in India. That's the unfortunate aspect of this. As I've gone around in different places, I'll show you from the feelings that I've had from various places I've been to. In Jhelum, on your left-hand side, you see a picture of a board in one of the dilapidated gurdwaras, which is lying there, unattended for 7 decades. No service has happened for 7 decades. But what's written in Gurmukhi on top is, we have a daily morning service in every gurdwara, which is called as Asa Diwar. It's a morning rendition. And it's written, Asa Diwar da Samay, the timing for Asa Diwar, right? And that's what is standing there. And I'm looking at them saying, 7 decades it's been standing there, waiting for the next service to happen. And you go into the next place out there, and this is a large congregation hall. The Granth Sahib, this Holy Scripture of Sikhs, would be kept on this platform, and the people would sit there, and these are lying absolute silently. I mean, you drop a stone inside, and it echoes, and it just goes on and on, right? So that's the unfortunate outcome of the partition that we are looking at from a philosophy point of view. And then to end this philosophical section, at Dera Sahib Gurdwara in Lahore, and I say this time and again, sir, both of you are people of influence, and I request to you that if you can have any influence at any point of time, please open the doors of the Gurdwaras in Punjab, in Pakistan, which are functional historical Gurdwaras, to our Muslim brothers and sisters too. Because when I go there, at the entrance, the security man, of course, for whatever reasons they say this was security reasons, but I say security can be enhanced, but don't stop people from coming inside. And he says, and my friends have gone with me, and Muslim friends, and they have been asked not to go inside because their faith happens to be Muslim. And this is the security people, not the Sikh security people. It's the government-appointed security people who are saying, if you're a Muslim, you can't go inside. That's against the principle of the Sikh faith. Sikh faith does not stop anyone from coming inside. And though there are, interestingly, at this Dera Sahib Gurdwara in Lahore, there is one family of Muslim which comes there to still sing the hymns of Guru Nanak, because their ancestors, their forefather, Guru Nanak's best friend was Bhai Mardana. He was a Muslim. Guru Nanak, I joke, he was struck by a travel bug. I mean, he was just traveling all over the world, and the man who traveled with him was Bhai Mardana, a Muslim, all the time, right? And his descendants today still come to this place to sing the renditions of Guru Nanak. And in this place I reached, and there was once, if you see at the scripture, there's a Sikh sitting there, and the three people who are singing, two of them happen to be the Sindhi Hindus, the Nanakpanthis, as I would call them, and one of them who's sitting and playing the tabla, he's a Muslim and a descendant of Bhai Mardana, right? And I'm looking there, I said, this is what we were supposed to be. That we could sit together and we could actually come together. But the unfortunate thing is, and I will give a slap to my community on this, is that after partition, pre-partition, there were certain families of Muslims who could perform singing of hymns in the Golden Temple at Amritsar. Unfortunately, the divide has become such a big problem that today the management committees of the Golden Temple in Amritsar would not permit a Muslim to sing inside the Sanctum Sanctorum. It's a problem on both the sides. Culturally, I say this is I'm at a memorial near Naushera, where a battle of Naushera happened, where Akali Phula Singh died in 1830s. And what we've forgotten is that Ranjit Singh's army had a lot of foreign European generals inside it. He had something like 55 generals from various parts, Americans, Europeans, British, as well as French, and a Russian also in his army. But interestingly, there was a small community of Gorkhas which are part of his soldiers. The leader of the Gorkhas, Balbhadra Kumar, along with Akali Phula Singh, a Sikh, and along with the Muslim soldiers also, they died at this place. And there was a memorial that was built here, and that's finished. And this is the Kabul River floating next to it. And I went there, and I made it a point to go and put my hand inside the river, because I feel, the stories that we write, the poetries that we write, the proses that we write are influenced heavily by the environment. The Punjabis, my forefather, my parents, the poetry of theirs was from this land. The star-crossed lovers of Heer Ranja, Sasi Punnu, Soni Mahiwal, these are all from the land of the 5 rivers. And in Gangetic Belt, people don't know these stories. And my Sikh community's next generation is not able to connect to these stories because the environment is not there with them. And I understand why you can't connect with these stories, because you can't feel the water of that river where these stories happen. You can't feel the soil of that place where these stories happen. That's the pain in terms of what we've lost in terms of our cultural aspects. I say this time and again, the problem is such a big problem. I don't point fingers. Every time you point a finger, 3 point back to you, right? Remember that. So this is not about India and Pakistan. This is about a problem that happened. Sikhs left and Sikhs went. Of course, now who's going to take care of the heritage? And heritage is taken as own tolls. And in the various villages, I found these beautiful frescoes, garbage dumps, and so on and so forth lying there. But I would turn around and say, we, the Sikhs, have destroyed it ourselves in the East Punjab, because as the Sikhs moved this side, the heritage does not exist in East Punjab anymore. Such beautiful heritage also existed there once in East Punjab in India. But we went there, and because we lost everything, now this was a mad rush from a human psychology point of view to prove yourself. And when you lose everything, you want to prove yourself that you are good and you are better. And therefore you went and destroyed your heritage in India. You plastered them with marble, you plastered them with gold and everything. You don't find such beautiful frescoes that are still lying in Pakistan, though in Pakistan, unfortunately, the community is not there to take care of them. In India, we've lost it all because we've destroyed it ourselves. We've committed suicide ourselves. That's the unfortunate socio-cultural impact to the community on both sides of the border. From a language perspective, I'm just going to take probably 5-7 more minutes out here. From a language perspective, suffering is on both the sides from a language perspective, right? It's a long topic, but the bottom line, in the undivided Punjab, there were multiple scripts. There was Gurmukhi, there was Shahmukhi. Pre-British occupation, there was Persian as the official language, and then it became the Urdu. But Punjabi remained as the spoken language, irrespective of whatever script you write in. One of the things that I noticed was in places like Hazro and all, I went to these Hindu temples, right, which are lying scattered and lying abandoned. And inside on the floors, I'm looking at the script that's written there, and this is the Gurmukhi script, which is in which the Hindus and Sikhs of Punjab would once write. But again, another socio-cultural aspect is that with the dispersion of the population into the Indian Gangetic Belt, what's happened is the Sikhs themselves are trying to hold on to the Gurmukhi because the script happens to be written in the Gurmukhi language. And if they lose the ability to read Gurmukhi, they've lost the ability to delve into the depths of the philosophy of their scripture, right? But the Hindu community, apart from the East Punjab, which went into the UP and Bihar, Maharashtra and other places, they have forgotten Gurmukhi. And when I'm going into these temples, I'm saying Gurmukhi, and you have a proof there, was a language which was common across us all, right? The Hindu and Sikh community. So this is again, and then my father was well versed with Urdu, and all the Sikhs and Hindus of that region would also read and write Urdu. But now Urdu is an Islamic language, so we will not read it either, right? I, having come back, sir, after having come back from Pakistan, I must say so that I've been so impacted that in the last 3 months I've learned how to read and write Urdu. So I reclaim my heritage. I reclaim my heritage because my father used to know it. So it's not religious, right? Again, this is a small thing here. When you're looking from a heritage point of view, on one side there are maintained aspects of the heritage. That's Ranjit Singh's memorial in Lahore. But then at the other side, where I'm walking up that huge amount of rubble, I'm inside the fort of Jamrod, which is under Pakistan Army right now, and I was very fortunate that Pakistan Army took me inside, and I was able to photograph it from inside. But this is a place where one of the bravest generals of the Punjab, Hari Singh Nalwa, died here in the expansion of the empire towards westward side, right? And today it's in rubble. So it's a big issue on both the sides, right? In terms of one place, there is things that are maintained, but majority of the things are now all finished, forgotten, right? To me, this was a very symbolic picture I clicked of looking at the Panja Sahib Gurdwara from the grills of a window, and to me it signified, though I'm there but not there as yet, because to access my own places of worship, my own community's places of worship, the visa regimes are so tight. I was very fortunate. It was a divine intervention that got me across the border so smoothly. But another Sikh wanting to go to places like these is struggling. The Hindu community is struggling. The Muslims on the other side are struggling to get to Ajmer Sharif on this side. The visa regimes are so tight because of the political environment that humanity is suffering. And to me, this symbolically represented that our whole entire existence has been caged, right? And in terms of the abandoned gurdwaras, one of the other problems that happened from a socio-cultural aspect is when the population swapped. You know, when a migration happened of 10 million people, 1 million died, and 10 million people moved on both the sides, a lot of people went inside gurdwaras, temples, halls of the communities on both the sides, right? Mosques in East Punjab suffered similarly, as has happened in the west side, where you find people from UP and Bihar 7 decades later. This is a gurdwara which is their home now, right? I've been very fortunate that everyone that I've gone and actually requested have allowed me to come inside. I see this as their property now, but humanly, from a human perspective, they've all allowed me to come inside and see. But it's the pain that I see on both the sides. You see the floors, you see still the tiles on the floor, and it's occupied on both the sides. Right? So that's the other issue. Communities stand divided, and I look at the names of the villages. To me, at an emotional level, it represents a lot. There is the Ratcliffe line dividing, very close to Lahore, dividing India and Pakistan. And on one side is the twin city. These are the twin cities. People used to say that, in the earlier days, there used to be the rich ones who would have their breakfast in Amritsar and go and have dinner in Lahore and come back. But there's a line which divides the two cities now. And on this side, in Pakistan side, I'm standing at the village called Killa Jeevan Singh, which is named after a Sikh. And just on the other side, if you see in the Google map, is the village which is named after a Muslim, Sarai Amanat Khan. It's the unfortunate, again, consequences of Pakistan, of the creation of Pakistan and India, that even the cities, which had commonalities here, stand divided, and we can't claim them. Coming to an end, as I said earlier, communities are existing. Though, yes, they've been dispersed, problems are there on both the sides of the border. We can't ignore it. Problems are there. But it doesn't mean that communities are not existing. And as I look at, here's a doctor who helped me in Lahore. He's a Pashtun Sikh. He's Dr. Mimpal Singh. He's a child specialist in Lahore. That's another person working in a hospital. All I want to say is that people are also living. So it's not as bad as people perceive. Though yes, they're minorities. And minorities anywhere will suffer. Minorities will suffer anywhere. Whether it be the blacks in USA or whether it be in India, the other minorities, or in Pakistan. That's a problem of the humanity, right? So we've got to rise above these things. In Sindh, I want to give you a flavor. I earlier talked about one Gurdwara was there at the time of 1947, and now today 23 Gurdwaras are operational. These are historical point of view, right? These are historical Gurdwaras. But as you go into Sindh and Balochistan, you'll be wonderstruck. The amount of community Gurdwaras that are mushrooming there. I believe you me, I was wonderstruck. Here's a Gurdwara which has just opened up 10 years back at Baba Tharia Singh Gurdwara. And he's the pivotal force, the man there. He's a Sindhi Sikh. And at Balochistan, you see in that community, in the congregation hall, they're all singing the Sikh verses in the end of the day. When I went there, there's only one man with a turban who's standing up there, but the rest is all the Nanakpanthi community sitting there, and they're all singing verses. So people are surviving. Let's not paint such a bad picture, but there is a problem, but people are surviving. And in ending, I would say, a lot of people have asked me many times, and especially the Pakistan people, the first reaction comes in is, sir, why have you called this as lost heritage, right? And I always say that, please see this from my point of view. If I don't have an access to my own places where my history was crafted, it is lost. So let's rise above why this and why that, and accept history cannot be changed. History has happened, it's been formed, but emotionally, I have all the right to emote and to claim, at least in the form of a book, what belongs to me and to my community. And as I stood at the remains of a Gurdwara in close to Jhelum, in a village called Kher Bawa, I found an apt writing on the walls, written by someone else in charcoal. And I hate when people destroy heritage, be it anywhere, right? In the Indian subcontinent, it's a big problem. Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, people will just destroy all forms of heritage, right? We have this in our DNA, right? Just to write our names. Claim with our love signs, as though someone's bothered about your love sign on the heritage, right? But here's something that I'm glad someone wrote. Because it said, I lost my everything. And to me, that was the emotion that I left with. And I looked at this another place in Gandia, this falling remains of a Gurdwara, which was a village Gurdwara, a small Gurdwara. It's resting on one leg. If you see it, it's tilting. It's resting on one leg. It's about to fall apart, right? And as I've gone around, last two slides, as I've gone around, I've looked at people. I'm standing, this picture was clicked while I was standing on the top of the first floor of a Gurdwara in Punjab, and I'm looking down I was definitely a Bollywood star because I'm standing and I know people are all there and looking at me, and the entire village has come around because they've never seen a Sikh before. They've never seen a Sikh in a land where Sikhs crafted the history. Irony of the whole thing, right? And I'm waving at them and they all are looking up there and wow, oh Sardarji, Sardarji, and you know, so I'm okay, all right, I'm a star here, right? So, and then as I'm leaving, I just want to leave with this. Let's rise above our divisions. Every place, you see that man, he's about 80 years. He sees me in the village in Basali, comes to me, gives me a hug. He says in Punjabi, I'll say it and then translate. He says, Aaj Jinder di yaad aa gayi. His childhood friend was Jinder. He says, you remind me of Jinder today. Look at the expression on his face. It's not my expression, look at his expression. Right? And as I travel on the streets, I'm amazed. People, this man just comes by and I'm standing by outside of Baba Bulle Shah's place in Kasur and I'm walking down and he comes and he just lifts the petals and he showers it on me. So if we rise above our divisions and our petty thinking, and I always try to shy away from politics, I think humanity can take us forward. Humanity can give a way forward, can shine a light in this today's strained relationship of two nuclear powers. And that's where I would like to end.
Well, this was, as was to be expected, excellent. We've learned a lot. One question that I'd like to ask, I mean, you concluded with a very rich expression, very rich sentiment. But politicians don't work on the basis of sentiments. If you were to meet with the Prime Ministers of India and Pakistan and they were to ask you, what is it we can do so that your heritage is not completely lost, what would you suggest?
I think we got to first and foremost keep one thing in mind. I mean, there's no easy answer for this. The ship has been sailing for 7 decades, and it's a heavy-duty tanker, right? Ain't going to turn so fast. It's going on full throttle. It's going on full throttle, and to turn a ship like that, it probably needs planning, and it'll take a while to turn. So, if I was supposed to claim that by my meeting the political heads and telling them open the borders, something's going to happen, no way. I'm fooling myself. The past is past. I think where it starts from is the ray of hope that I see is the social media has opened up so much of humanity amongst us. Whatever the politicians may be doing, the reality is we are talking across the borders. Let's get that straight. We are talking more and more, and we are crying and we are sharing our emotions. The question is, can this subcontinent have a day when the Berlin Wall came down? I have no ability to see into the future, but I can tell you, in the social media, the Berlin Wall is falling. And that's all I can say, sir.
Questions? Yes.
Okay, just some comments on minority rights in Pakistan. If you look at the creation of Pakistan, I mean, firstly, I don't want to spend too much time talking about this, but two-nation theory is actually a Hindu concept. It was Veer Savarkar who actually came up with the idea, and it was, by the Hindus actually antagonizing the Muslim community that,
I think you have to ask a question rather than.
All right, sure. Sorry. So, okay, I just wanted to say that. Okay, just make this fast. All right, on December 29, 1930, when Allama Iqbal was the president of the All India Muslim League in Allahabad, he did say that according to the teachings of the Quran, it is my duty to defend the places of worship of the other religions if need be. So that's on minority rights in Pakistan. All right, my question for you is that based on your observations and all that, how do you think that actually, how do you think that your culture, your heritage can be made more accepted, more mainstream in Pakistan?
So first and foremost, when you talked about the minority rights, I think let's not forget, Muslims also suffered in East Punjab. Their heritage is equally abandoned and equally forgotten, right? So it's a problem. Yes, a large section of Muslims resides in India. I'm not denying that, and they are living as respectful citizens. But Punjab was bloodied, partitioned, and cleansed on both the sides, right? I seldom call it as partition of India. I call it as partition of Punjab. If you look at it from that lens and start building it up, you'll understand from a humane perspective that the problem is far more bigger. Your second part was about the Sikh community, what we could do, right? Yeah, I'm at loss. I have stopped rationalizing anything because my community is in a deep slumber. It's in a deep slumber about its existence that was in Pakistan. 80% of the empire once existed in the lands that became Pakistan. They don't emotionally connect with it. I'm glad this book has done very well. In about 20 months, it's gone to the 4th print run. It's doing well. But these are coffee table books. They're very small segments we're talking about. Majority of my community does not connect with it. As much as accessible as I've made it with 500 plus pictures, they don't connect with it. I've gone and appealed around the world. Pakistan government has an appetite. If we go with a proposal to adopt a monument, we pay through our pockets as a community. Sikh community is very generous, I tell you, but generous in many times in the wrong ways. Right? We have plastered and taken out and replastered gold on the Golden Temple many times. And I've gone and said that, you know what, can we adopt one monument in Pakistan? And I've got the monument, Mangat Gurdwara, which is lying in shambles right now. The beauty of that Mangat Gurdwara is nothing less than in terms of frescoes around, like the Golden Temple's frescoes inside. Beautiful structure. The only reason why it's lying abandoned is because such structures have stopped existing in East Punjab, which is in India, because we've put marble and we put gold on them. We don't need others to destroy it. We've destroyed it ourselves, right? We Sikhs don't need others to destroy the heritage. We've destroyed it ourselves. We made him grander. You go to Amritsar, this time I went 1 year, just about 8 months back. I don't need to go to Disneyland anymore. Because Golden Temple around, the periphery around it, because just in the precursor to the election, the Akali government went and plastered the whole thing with marble, the Parisian statues, and I'm looking at them. This is Punjab, or am I in Paris? Do I need Paris in Punjab? So let's get it right. We are in a slumber. I have appealed, just to conclude that answer, I've appealed I've spoken at 74 places around the world in my journey of this book, from Jan to August of last year. There has been a great reception for the subject, but I have again and again appealed that if we can mobilize funding and go to the Pakistan government and say, we want to adopt the Mangat Gurdwara, and it's been lying there only because the Sikhs have stopped existing there. And it's just time is acting on it. But can we revive that artisan, that Muslim artisan whom we used to engage to do the craft work, the frescoes inside the Golden Temple and many of our historical Gurdwaras? Can we revive that art? And I've also proposed that Aga Khan Trust is probably a great place to start because they have the skills. They've been doing a lot for the Islamic monuments. But there's not a single organization that's nodded their head as yet. It's like here and here. So I don't have an answer. I have come down to a only conclusion that some divine power is making me do this. I have no answer to this. I spoke in Islamabad Literature Festival and I did use the same statement. And one man, old gentleman, came to me after. He says, "You take a lot of anchor in the divine." I said, "Because I can't explain. There's no rationality in this, right? How is it happening? Why is it happening? I don't know." So I have to conclude this. There's some divine power that's making me work this. And in the span of 2.5 years, I have now left 1,000 pages, 500 here, second book coming out, 1,000 pages. How it's happened so fast, I can't explain. These are PhD theses, right, in their own rights. And I'm finishing 2 of them in 2.5 years. But my job is to write, document, leave it for posterity. And I think if I've done that, that's what my role is. It ends there. someone else wants to pick it up, wants to do it, I'm not going to waste my time.
Sorry, I just want to follow up.
No, I think if they,
I think it's a fascinating story, and I've had the, of course, privilege of speaking with you earlier on this. I mean, you have described it at community level, the pains of division, the pains of partition. At an individual level, Sadat Hassan Manto has the story Toba Take Singh, where the individual, I think, ultimately goes mad. But this is not something that is absolutely unique to Punjab. It has happened in other. Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is what I was coming to.
Sorry if I didn't bring that into the picture, but it was not intentional.
Yes. No, it's all right. It's all right. But there is I'll also point to a difference between Bengal and Punjab. Bengal, the same thing happened. Exactly that line drawn across. In fact, dividing houses, dividing. I myself come from a district called Sylhet, which, as you know, like Punjab, came to Pakistan through a referendum, and you know, land, property, families were divided right across. But to continue, on the lines of what Javed Bhai had hinted at, I want to make 2 points. One is, okay, you have these 2 massive projects, but I feel that it'll need to have a thesis. I mean, you said that you want to leave it to someone else to write the thesis, but if you have a compilation of this kind, 1,000 pages, you need to contain a single message. Now, if you are asked what this message is it something in your head, and what would this message be? After this massive effort, there is something that you want to tell the world. Are you going to say that partitions are bad, or there should be different political answers to communities that feel different, etc.? So what would be the single thesis that you would like to underscore?
The only thing that I'm not a politician, I'm not an academician, so I tend to think a bit differently. The only thing that I've been telling people is, don't forget your past. Because past is a rear view mirror which allows you to look through the windscreen and drive in front, to not make those mistakes that you once did or your forefathers once did. And that's the only message I want to leave. Because when you see a work like this and your eyes will tear, hopefully it'll make you a bit better human being to say, you know what, before I react to something, actually I write very regularly on my Facebook, and I write try and maintain one post a day or 2 days, right? And I write I have a lot of people across the borders, right? But sometimes a radical will come without understanding what I'm trying to say, will react and say things which he's not understood. And I say, you know what, and I always tell them, please go back and read the post with a calm mind, as in totality, not in fragmented what you want to hear. So my point is simple, that that's the only message I want to leave. Don't forget the past, and let it navigate you into the future.
I think it's a very powerful message. I just wonder whether when you have a great deal of history, you don't respect it. I live in a country which is very young, in the United States, where anything that's about 20 years old becomes historical. And as you have vividly pointed out, both in your presentation and in your pictures and in your writing, there is so much history in our part of the world, but we are determined to destroy it.
Yeah.
Not deliberately, but just carelessly. If you go to Makkah, I mean, what the Saudis have done to that mosque, it is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, you were talking about the Golden Mosque. They have destroyed everything around this mosque, paved it with marble and so on and so forth. There's a lovely picture you have in this book. It's the Mazar of Bulle Shah,
Yeah.
marble.
Yeah.
You go to Tata Ganj Baksh,
Yeah.
marble. So somehow or other, we people who have I guess, more respect for heritage, really need to give a very strong message to the people who are in decision-making positions, that value your history, because from your history you learn lessons.
Yeah.
Anyhow, any other?
Good evening, sir. I'm Sylvia from ISIS. Thank you for your presentation. Beside its extreme relevance from the historical and cultural point of view, I also appreciated your enthusiasm and your message, positive message of brotherhood and humanity. I have two questions. The first one is about the concept of Nanakpantism that you have talked about. I understand that these believers identify themselves as Sikhs, but are not identified by the others as such. So could you further elaborate on that and
I'll
about
take that first, and then I'll take your second one.
Okay,
one
yes,
at a time, right?
please.
I always say, before you point a finger, 3 point back at you, right? So I would not point to the others. First, I'll point to ourselves. The Sikh faith, if you see, and I'll keep it very brief because it's a long answer to this, and we can have a separate conversation, but the evolution of the Sikh faith, from where it started, where Baba Nanak's proclamation was, Na ko Hindu, na Musalman. He says, neither are you a Hindu or neither are you a Muslim. Be a humane first, right? Over a period of time, as every faith and every philosophy develops, it forms boundaries. And evolution of the Sikh faith, because of whatever happened geographically, historically, resulted in the present form and the stuff by the time of the 10th group, and we'll not get into that. But there was a time in the early 1900s, we ourselves, in Punjab, there was a lot of violence happening amongst the Sikhs. Their heads were being sawed off in the mid 1700s when the invasions were happening, right? A Sikh in this form could not live, so he was living in the jungles, right? But they were doing more of guerrilla warfare to kind of push back the invaders. But when the Sikhs got the power, and once they actually formed themselves and they actually formed their identity, the first thing that they did was define who a Sikh is. And that definition led to giving up many who were loosely bound to the faith, not because of the form, but because of the belief system. Because we, by defining who we are, got to keep in mind, will also have to let go of the others. And that's the biggest problem that happened, if that answers your question. It's a long answer to how it happened. I mean, I won't be able to get into that right here, but I would say it's first us. So in India, these Nanakpanthis in Pakistan who are existing, they would be definitely seen as Hindus, outright. A Sikh will not accept them as a Sikh. And in Pakistan, when you go, for 7 decades, they're compartmentalized and they are living in small communities which have not had, connects with the broader communities. It's a small community. They proudly say, if I get up in the morning and I do this Sikh prayer, in the afternoon I do this Sikh prayer, and I do this amount of charity giving and blah, 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 all the protocols, am I still not a Sikh? One person asked me this question. He says, why do you call me a Nanakpanthi? I said, no, I'm not calling you a Nanakpanthi. I had to clarify. I said, I say this because I want my community to get up and start thinking, what have we done to ourselves?
Thank you.
I can have a separate conversation with you later on if you want more details.
I hope you will. Thank you very much. May I ask a second question? Yeah. As I said, one of your very positive messages was that of humanity. We are all human, and in the end, we are the same from one side and the other of the border. I was very impressed by the sentence you have said, the words in which you have put it, Punjab has been cleansed from one side and the other in the same way. And what indeed is happening nowadays, as you also mentioned, happens on one side and on the other of the border. While there is an issue with the preservation of the Sikh heritage in Pakistan, there is also an issue with the remembrance and the preservation of the Muslim heritage in Indian Punjab. In your last map, you have mentioned Sarai Amanat Khan, which is a place I have visited while I was traveling near Amritsar. And I was shocked in finding the Sarai so beautiful, with the inscription made by such a famous calligrapher like Amanat Khan, completely left to rot. Earlier, Mr. Burki asked you what would you say to the President of India and Pakistan if you could meet them. I think that for sure a stronger engagement from the governments, the institutions is necessary. But on the other hand, a long-term and effective preservation of heritage must be not only a top-down but also a bottom-up process. For example, Serai Amanat Khan. When I visited it, people were stealing bricks in order to build their own houses. Some who were probably too lazy to steal the bricks just built their house using part of the walls that go around the Serai. And I think that therefore there is a strong issue with awareness. You also mentioned that according to you, most of your community would not be really responsive to a book like yours. So I'm asking you, what do you think would be needed in order to raise awareness among normal people? I'm not talking about governments, but I'm talking about people who live next to those gurdwaras on one side of the border and people who live next to those ruins of mosques and serais on the other.
Yeah, so before I answer that question, I would say if you've been to Sarai Amanat Khan, hop across to Pakistan. I'm sure the Pakistan ambassador is here, he can give you a visa, and go to Killa Jeevan Singh on the other side. Same story, same story. And Killa Jeevan Singh, I sat in that Killa and I was looking, it's a fort kind of a place, right? It's not literally a fort, but it's a village fort, right? And I looked across to Sarai Amanat Khan, and it's a hilarious thing that the man who stays in there, I sat with him on his cot. It was a winter morning, and we had cups of tea, and he walked me across, and then he started telling me the stories. And he was a courier for many years, having crossed the border many times, delivering things here and there. And his son, of course, recently got shot at the border doing the same activity, right? So he was cursing the present Pakistani and the Indian governments for having made the border so tight that we can't do our trade, right? But anyhow, what I'm getting to is that to your other question from what we could do. See, I've given the answer to that. It's so tough a journey. First and foremost, for a man like me, who's not in an academic institution, who's given up his corporate career, just because he feels very passionately about this, right? I have to be insane, first and foremost. Let's start with that. So you need insane people like me to first try and drive a change. I have given up 2.5 years of my livelihood to simply do this because I feel so strongly about it. And it's not been an easy path. I don't know what lies ahead for me in the future, but I'm not embraced at this point of time by any organizations. I'm not having a salary check. I'm just doing it because I feel strongly about it. So when people like that start getting a passion about it, I think change will come. Now, I'm also not very optimistic. I'm not optimistic because policies are not driven by the people who are impacted by this tragedy. Policies are driven by others who don't understand the problem, either in India or in Pakistan. Right? And that's where I think if you see the East and the West, the Germany, the two parts of the Germany, where the wall was also brought down at some point in time, is the politicians and the others at the higher level could not understand it. It's the common man who did something. So whether it will lead to a change, I don't know, but I feel strongly about it. And I've said this in many of my seminars, I said, when is the day I will see a Jain get up and say, I've got to reclaim my Jain legacy by writing it. I've got to reclaim the Hindu legacy by writing it. I've got to reclaim the Islamic legacy in East Punjab by writing it. I think when we have mad people like me going around doing this, hopefully change can happen someday. I don't know. But I'm not very optimistic about it.
Javed?
Thank you very much. Actually, I'd just like to come to Dr. Chaudhry's point again about having a thesis, which I think you actually have very strongly in your first slide about religion and philosophy, and that you said was the fundamental divide, which was the sort of beginning of all evils. And my proposition to you is that rather than just history, we need to reclaim our metaphysics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because religion has overridden everything else, and we need to deconstruct religion and find the common ground. And I hope you will take that further.
So if you read my book, if you get a chance ever, there's a copy lying in the ISS library. it's every word here and there is ingrained with exactly what you're trying to say. I'm not a historian. I'm not trying to teach people history. History is the most boring thing it was the most boring subject that was taught to me in school, right? I'm trying to teach you history in a different way. It's through my perceptions, my feelings, my emotions, my couplets, my sayings, but cross faiths that I'm bringing in through, and I'm trying to tell you what I see today and connecting it to the past. And I think that's been the reason why the book has been successful in the small domain that it has been, that's gone to the 4th print in just about 18, 20 months. It's doing very well, right? But it's because of the humane approach. It's exactly the point you're saying. So if you try and read it, read a few chapters. Let's just pick up a few chapters. Read a chapter called Meeting Nuri. See the humane touch in that. I mean, it's not about history, but there are other chapters you read about history. But there's a lot of such stories there, which is intertwining in this book.
Thank you, Chairman Zainal Abidin here. We heard about the marbles and the laws of heritage, but I really marvel at your presentation.
Thank you.
My question is related to the earlier one about Sikhism and the partition. 40 years ago, I attended a talk in my school, in my class, and one of my classmates told me, he asked me this question, do you know why the Sikhs keep the 5 vows? Is it 5 vows?
5 symbols.
The symbols, like the bangle, the hair.
5 symbols.
Yeah, and we didn't know. But he said, is a vow taken by the Sikhs that as long as the Muslims are in India, they will keep those symbols.
So do you really believe in that?
No, that's my question. I want to know whether in fact it's true, whether it's true. And I couldn't believe it because the 6 friends which I know, which I have, I don't see that in them. And your presentation just proved to me that in fact that cannot be true because you really came with a big heart and you came with the mind that I think says a lot about what we need today in this world. So my question is to overcome this, to bridge this divide, this pain. Is secularism the answer?
So, to answer that question, first of all, let me address it. It's an intertwined answer I'll give, but what your friend said, let me start with that. I'm not going to give you the explanation because that's not my objective, right? Simply, it's the people with little bit of less of this grey matter who tend to kind of think the way probably someone's trying to tell you. Let me put it this way, I've in my part of my many presentations that I've given around the world, I've been very careful with the choice of words that I deliver, right? The history in India and Pakistan is written this way. The Islamic, India writes it, India's books will write, Islamic invasion of the Indian subcontinent. The Pakistani books will write the advent of Islam. You see the choice of words? Conquest versus advent. It gives you a very different flavor. The reality remains, Islam came into the Indian subcontinent not just by the invaders, it came by also the Sufi saints. And they brought in more of that thought. And there's a beauty in it, right? The invaders, on the other hand, whom were they fighting? They were fighting another ruler who was also a believer of Islamic faith. So was it that they were fighting an Islamic war or were they fighting for the powers? Now when the Sikh power was getting formed in the early days, in the inception when the 5 Ks came into the 5 symbols came into the being, it was a tug of war against the narrow vision of the Mughal Empire. And the Sikhs make a mistake because of sometimes people have less of grey matter who interpret it. Mughal is not equal to Islam. The people of the Mughal Empire happen to be Islamic faith does not mean that they are Islamic rulers. Because they were Islamic rulers, they would not suppress the freedom of thought of another belief. So it is a tussle of power. And in that tussle of power, because the Sikhs went on a loggerhead for their own self-preservation and for preservation of the other communities that were, the Hindu Pandits were being on mass scale converted in Kashmir. When they went in and raised the voice against this inhuman act, it got perceived in the history as going against Islam. No. It was against the rule of Mughal. In fact, a lot of Islamic people in our history have helped the Sikh gurus. With that, I'll end. So I think, does that answer your question?
I think we'll have
Yeah. So secularism, the way forward, I mean, I guess it's all about the mindset. I mean, that's what I was trying to say this along the thing is, it's all about the mindset. It's the, make your gray matter a bit bigger to see things that I'm trying to tell you in this presentation. You know, I was hearing a clip today. Okay, we know in India there's a lot of hue and cry happening about beef, right, nowadays. We are hearing, and today morning I heard about one video, one of the generals in Pakistan, in Karachi, is saying that I'm a Pakistani and I'm a Muslim and I'm blah 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 on the 14th August, and I was wondering, where do the other minorities fit in this? You could also say we are Pakistanis and we are a bouquet of so many communities. So when you start thinking that way, you distort the whole secularism. That's how 1947 happened.
I think we'll take two more questions, one here and one there, and then we will conclude.
Hi. I can ask you things separately too, Amardeep, but this is something that grew in my mind from your presentation today. You know, when you were talking about the fact that heritage is getting neglected, yes, there is that top-down aspect to it. But more importantly, of course, there aren't very many Sikhs left for whom these would have been important structures, even in terms of the monuments. And it's not a perfect comparison, but I think of what happened to Buddhist monuments in India. It was the British that actually started excavating them, because there were very few Buddhists left in India, you know, by the time the British had come. And even the Mahabodhi temple was in use, but people thought that all the statues there were Hindu statues, and there were, you know, Hindu priests that were in charge of that temple. Until today, Mahabodhi temple is the most sacred place for Buddhists anywhere in the world. Till today, its administrative setup has 4 Hindus, 4 Buddhists, and then the civil administrator of that district is the chairman of the council. So of course, I mean, you know, if you don't have a people that believe in those things, for whom they have that emotional connect, then the heritage to an extent is going to be neglected.
So
However,
and I've said that in the presentation, that it is actually a big complicated problem.
Exactly. And I think, I mean, that, you know, that emotional connect aspect that you talked about is extremely, extremely important. And in fact, what we have in India today in terms of the Buddhist monuments, Sarnath and all these places, they've actually come up, a lot of them, with Japanese or Burmese or, you know, practicing Buddhist countries as contributions or involvement, Sri Lanka most of all. But the other quick point that I would like to make here is, you know, you were talking of what's happened in East Punjab. I mean, of course, your subject is Punjab today. You're talking about Punjab. But actually, this happens everywhere else. I was even born after partition, and I'm a Kashmiri, but my father knew Punjabi very well, and he actually really got on very well with Punjabis. And I actually, when I think back to it, I was born and raised in Delhi, and I saw Delhi change. Delhi was considered a city of great culture, and the language was Hindustani, which is a sort of closer to Urdu than anything else. And we reached a stage where you'd walk into a shop and people would talk to you in Punjabi, which Delhi people did not consider that culture. These were people who were refugees. And it took me a while to understand that all Punjabis are not refugees, because those were the only people that I used to see in Delhi. Yep. So, you know, Delhi itself, its food culture has undergone a change. It's almost become like a Punjabi city to many people that knew it as something very different. Because the people to whom that culture belonged, about 30% of Delhi's people were Muslims before partition.
So 1947 changed the flavor of Islam, of Delhi, from an Islamic city into a Punjabi city.
Yes, I don't
Punjabi
even say
city
Islamic so much,
No,
but you know, it had a certain culture, it has a certain language.
Yeah, it had a huge culture of Islam, and
Yes,
and it just
it
changed.
did.
It vanished overnight. Yeah.
It did, and so the language changed, the food culture, everything changed. So there must be many cities like that on both sides of the border. You know, even if you have Muslims in Delhi or whatever, things still have changed, I think.
I think we take one more and then we will conclude, please.
Thank you. My name is Vijay Saluja. I am a senior fellow at the Institute of Social Sciences, New Delhi. My parents and ancestors all came from Pakistan, and they were first working in Lahore and all this, and they were civil servants, and then we came to various places in Punjab and now in New Delhi. During the last 10 years, I had the chance of visiting Pakistan twice. Once to see the cricket match, and the second time as a part of the Commonwealth delegation in Islamabad. And my first visit was in Lahore. My observation is this, that I found the people over there extremely affectionate, lovable, and I felt more at home there because the language which they spoke were the language which my grandmother and people spoke at home. I mean, I could see, because when I live in Delhi and you speak in Hindi, Punjabi, English and whatnot, but there it was only the Punjabi which we spoke at home. I mean, the same dialect, the same way of talking and everything. And whenever we visited to various friends whom we came across during our 6 days program at Islamabad, I mean, they were absolutely affectionate, and I really feel that whatever things have been created between the two nations, to my mind, it is more of a political sort of a thing, and both the people across, this side or that side, they do not find any difference between the two people. So I really wonder, and this is a question to Mr. Amardeep Singh Ji, that it's an excellent work which you have put in and done. But where do you go from here? Because this should not stay as one of the excellent coffee book in the libraries and other drawing rooms, but where do we go from here? Because we know people, the common man, both sides of the country are not interested in all this thing, and so this is my question. And second, because my cousins, who lived in Lahore, in Ram Gali and other things, they were very prosperous and doing good in business. So when I was visiting Lahore, one of my cousin, who is very fond of Lahore and his place, asked me, will you go to Ram Gali and find out what happened to our house? So I went to Ram Gali of Lahore, and there was a Gurdwara in their gully, which I particularly have visited, but that Gurdwara was not there. It was converted into a mosque. So when I came back, when my cousin asked me, what happened? Is the Gurdwara still functioning? And I told him, no, the Gurdwara is not functioning. But beside that, I found the people, as I said, very affectionate. So this is my question to Mr. Burki and the High Commissioner, that where do we go from here to bring back that affectionate bond which exists in the people here and there? That is my one question. Thank you.
Can I just take a few pieces and I'll leave it to the two of you to actually conclude with that. We talked about going to the Ram Gali, right? Let's not forget, across in Jalandhar, I can tell you a Gurdwara that was once a mosque. So I go back to the first slide, Roye Asivi and Roye Tusivio. We have cried on both the sides, okay? So let's not forget that. It's a pain, it's a big problem, right? So the second thing is, love and affection, of course, it's bountiful. 1,000 pages, 2 books. How can it happen? It's not me who's doing it. I'm just an instrument of delivery. It's the love and affection of the people and the energies that are making me do this, right? So it is definitely they who are speaking through this work. It's not me speaking through it, right? I'm just delivering it. Where do we go from here? And you said about the emotions that you felt out there, right? I go back to that slide I showed you. Why did I go down to the Kabul River and put my hand inside it? It's the same emotion. It's the emotion because my stories of Heer Ranja, Bulle Shah, or Soni Mahiwal, which my scriptures filled with, I cannot connect with it because the environment is snatched from it. The environment is what makes you breathe. If I'm thrown into the Gangetic belt and if I want to be told and forced now to think that my ancestral stories, which belong to Jhelum and Indus, now has to be refabricated and put into the Gangetic belt, boy, it's going to take me a while. It's the DNA that has to change, right? It's not about me. I've accepted it. But the stories will take, the DNA has to change from generations, right? So where do we go from here? I've said this time and again. I think it's the humanity that has to prevail, right? We have to, the walls have broken. I can tell you clearly, walls have broken in the social media. I can today, you tell me, yesterday there was a lady who reached out to me, and that's where I'll stop. There's a lady who reached out in a public forum, and that's the answer to this. And she says, our ancestors were from Peshawar. I am got a map which my dad drew by hand, and I am wanting someone to send me a picture of our ancestral house. I simply read that. I sent a message to her and to another person whom I know in Peshawar. By the evening, she had pictures of it. Walls have broken in the social media. People are coming together. Politicians can stay in their cocoons. They have to wake up one day.
I think this is an excellent conclusion to a very interesting discussion. My answer would be the same, the question that you were asking, that it is because of social media that people have begun to see that there are human beings on both sides of the border. We are saying, I live in the United States, and we are seeing this in the United States. See what's happened in Charlottesville, and see how the politicians are reacting to that, and what the people are saying. My view is that there's a lot of positive sentiment in Pakistan towards demolishing the walls. I once suggested to the president of Pakistan, I said, do away with the visa regime. Let everybody come. And he said, well, my security forces will not let that happen. What happens if terrorists come? So I said to him, did the people who go to Mumbai get visas to get there? So, I mean, politicians will always find reasons for doing it because that's their bread and butter. But I think people are becoming, at least on the Pakistani side of the border, I don't know whether the High Commissioner agrees with me, a lot of sentiment of working with India. Let me conclude. Thank you very much, Amardeep. Excellent presentation, very good responses. I think we need to end. Okay. And there very small token of our appreciation. Thank you. A subject. Thank you.